All right, guys, we're going to do a little bit more with Gui programming. You've used Windows or Mac or whatever long enough to know that you have a lot more than just buttons, right? You could have radio buttons. Radio buttons are the ones where you can check only one, out of a group. You got check boxes, right, where you can check as many as you want to out of a group. You got text fields, scrolling text fields that display information, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to do a few of those. At least we're going to do radio buttons and scrolling text fields and probably some more as well. So again, we're going to be using the tkinter interface. Excuse me, library, classes. Library is the correct term for it. So on Tuesday, all of my examples relied on us doing this from tkinter import star. And then as I was creating all my examples here, they all wanted me to do from or import tkinter as tk. Now what that does is it imports this library but renames it tk. So if we had done this, import turtle as tt, then when we wanted to make a turtle, we would do t, or whatever our turtle name was. Mickey is equal to t.turtle, right? Can I type? It's doubtful. Alrighty, so that rename, excuse me, tt.turtle. That renames, in effect, this library as TT. Now, what we were doing on Tuesday was doing, and you don't have to type all this because I'm probably going to delete it all. What we were doing on Tuesday was from turtle import everything, or from tkinter import everything. And then in that case, if we were going to create a new turtle, we would just do that, right? Because it says bring it all in, and we don't even have to address it by its library name. So I guess my examples today are going to do that. You're just going to have to keep in mind that if you look in Tuesday's examples and you look in today's examples, the syntax is going to be a little bit different. Because if we were going to make a button, as of Tuesday, we were doing stuff like this, right? B is equal to button, blah, 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 blah. Because we did this from tkinter import star. But today, since we're going to do this, import tkinter as tk, then it's going to look like this. B is equal to tk.button. We're going to have to prefix the name of the class with the name of the library. Now, honestly, one thing I like to do, and it's horrible, other people would probably shudder, is to do both, right? From tkinter import whatever, and then do that one as well. And that way I can switch between the two syntaxes, but that would drive, professional Python programmers crazy. And like I said, I hope you didn't type all that because this is just all garbage. So with that in mind, we're going to do import tkinter as tk. Another difference between what we did yesterday and what we did today, or Tuesday and what we did today, is everywhere we went, we did this, when is equal to whatever. All of the examples out on the internet do root is equal to whatever. I'm kind of waffling on Reddit to make y'all do root is equal to whatever or when is equal to whatever. It doesn't really matter. Remember, variable names don't mean anything except to us. Right? Function names are very important. Right? If the function is called open, we can't decide to call it Fred. But a variable name, we can call Fred. We could say Fred is equal to whatever and create it. Why don't we stick with what we did on the on Tuesday, just so that our examples are somewhat similar. And then if we want to, we could change this later from import tkinter as tk to from whatever import star. And that way it'll look exactly like it did on Tuesday. All right, so whenever you're using a user interface, the first thing you have to do is actually create your window. So we're going to do that. And I want to make absolutely sure I get this right because I don't have it in my notes right here. I'm going to pop it open. Yeah, like that. See, this is how we did it when we did from tkinter import star. But since we did import as tk, we're going to do that. When is equal to tk.capital TK. That kind of looks like when it was turtle.turtle, right? Let's make absolutely sure this works. I think we're on Lecture X. So, Lecture X. All right, it created its window. You see the difference? Tuesday we did stuff like this. Here we're having to prefix the name of the control, the name of the class, with the name of the library. You know, we could call the library something else, you know, Fred. And don't do this. I'm going to undo it immediately. And then if we wanted to create a window, we could do that, right? Because that's just a name. That's a name we get to pick. Going back to TK there. All right, so we have a window here. What are we going to put in our window? How about some checkboxes? Not checkboxes, radio buttons, the ones where you're going to select. I guess the reason they're called that is probably none of y'all have ever used, you know, a radio in your car so old that you had the push buttons and you could only press one of them at a time. Do you remember that? You know, press it in and the other ones would pop out. Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of like that. So that's what our radio buttons mean. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to create some text. Well, firstly, let's create a title for our application. So TK label, I'm just going to give it a variable name. T is equal to TK label, and what is our label going to be? Choose your favorite beetle. But we have to say what parameter we're filling in, because labels have a whole bunch of attributes. We could pick the font size, we could pick how much padding there is around it, what color it is, stuff like that. So we're going to say that that's the text. And then we're going to pack our label. Let's make sure that works. Don't want any syntax errors. Alrighty, we've got a label. Label right here. Now that actually didn't create a title for our window. I kind of spaced out and thought that that was going to put a title on our window. But whatever, it's a label. It's cool. Good enough. I've decided that today, if we're not going to change anything, we may as well just reuse the same variable name over and over and over. So I'm going to wind up using T is equal to this, T is equal to that. But if it's something that needs to change, then we may do something else. All right, now we're going to create some radio buttons, at least two of them. We're going to pick between Paul and Ringo. T is equal to TK dot radio button, all one word, capital R. Radio button when. You know what? I am real surprised I didn't have to put when here, right, to specify that it was part of this current group. I'm wondering if I can leave that out. I'm going to try leaving it out. You know, right? It would save a little bit of typing. Text is equal to, you know, Paul. And what variable is it going to control? We're going to have to know what variable to check after they have voted. I forgot to create a vote variable, so I'm going to do that now. Vote is, I'm putting it on the line above it. Ooh, and I missed my, on my screenshot here, I forgot how to create this variable. We can probably use a string var rather than an int. Let's go take a look. Let's go see what we did. Where was string var? Like that. So is it int var? I bet it is. So vote is equal to tk.intevar. I'm going to compile it, make sure that's not a syntax error. Whoops, but this will be, so I'm going to comment that out temporarily. I like compiling early and compiling often. right? I want to fix syntax errors as soon as possible. So I may try running it every single change I make. Alrighty. So, T, my radio button, yeah, we could give it a better name, like R1 for radio button 1, but you know, the name is actually unimportant. We're just going to create the button, we're going to add it to the control, and then we're going to go on to do the next thing we're going to do, which is create another button. And so variable is equal to vote. That's what we want to change every time they make a choice. And do you remember how when we had an entry field, we tied that to a string var? Here, we're tying a radio button to an integer. So when they pick one thing, the integer is going to equal one number. And when they pick something else, the integer is going to equal another number. And we'll find out what it equals in just a minute. We're going to add a button that'll print that value out. Alrighty, now we've got a packet. T.pack. I'm just going to copy all this stuff because I'm lazy. I'm going to copy those two statements and paste them and change the word Paul to Ringo. Run it. Alright, there we go. Now there's something I don't like about the way this looks. I don't really like these being centered. I mean, I'd rather them all be lined up, right? That's how we like to see lists. It's lined up. So do you remember when we did side is equal? Maybe we can pick a side and push it over to where we want. So how about side is equal to tk dot left? I'm going to copy and paste that and put it into both. And what do you know? It didn't work because I capitalized tk and what was it really supposed to be? Lowercase. And it might have been fun to make it all uppercase. It would have kind of jumped out at us, but too late. All right. Well, that's kind of cool too, but it's not really what I intended. I wanted them to be lined up vertically. So I'm going to have to take another approach. I'm going to have to use something called anchor. Anchor is a little bit different than picking a side. So instead of doing side equals tk.left, I'm doing anchor is equal to, and I'm also going to change tk.left to tk.west. Okay, so each one of them is going to say anchor is equal to tk.west. Or it could blow up. Let's see what I did wrong. Cheat sheet. Oh, excuse me, it's a single letter. Why do they do right and left and up and down with a whole, word, but west, east, north, and south are just single letters? Don't know. Or whatever. See what I did? I changed those .west to .w and the word side to anchor. I'm hoping that works. I will move on. Okay, now they're kind of lined up. I'm digging it. So the difference between doing side is equal to the left is if you do side equal to the left, it'll just keep pushing things over on the current line, right? Each time you do a pack, it could go to the next line, but if you say side is equal to left, it'll just kind of keep trying to push things over to where you are, right? Like tabbing, over to the beginning of the line and typing. But if we do anchor, then it actually goes to the next line after assigning it. Now, one thing that would have been cool, which I didn't take the time to research how to do, would be to group these in a box, right? Because what if we had more than one vote? It'd be nice to group them together in their own little boxes. You've seen those things, right? You pop up a configuration dialog, and it's got one little grouping and some buttons in it, and it's got another grouping with some buttons in it. That'd be cool. You can do all sorts of things with TKI and TER. You can put tabs and scroll bars, and, well, let's keep going. So that's pretty good. We've got pretty much what we want. Except there's no way for them to actually vote. Right? We need a vote button. Now the vote button is going to look exactly like it did last time. We're just going to do something, B is equal to tk.button. But we have to have a function for it to call, right? If you have a button and it doesn't have a function to call, then it's a useless button. So def vote, parentheses, in parentheses, colon. And what's it going to do? All it's going to do is print out. Oh, I've made a mistake. I should not name a variable and a function the same thing.
Vote one.
Yeah, vote now, vote button. Something like that. Record vote. We have a million names we could go with. Okay, and what's it going to do? It's going to print vote.get. We have to use get to get the integer out of it, just like when it was a string var, we had to call get to get the value out. We could prove it to ourselves by just printing that. We might play with that. All right, now let's create a button that will call that function. So it's going to be b is equal to tk.button, and we're going to put some stuff between the parentheses. We could just keep reusing the t variable, actually. But whatever. B is equal to button. Excuse me. B is equal to tk.capital button. And what's the text? Text is equal to vote, end quote, or exclamation point, end quote. And the command that it's supposed to run is equal to vote now. And at the very bottom of all our code, we need to do that main loop thing. So windows.main loop. Now, could we have made this a class? Yeah, we could have. But we didn't. My vote button is gone. What did I forget to do?
Okay.
Right, got to pack it. So b.pack. And I don't mind letting it be centered. That's the default, is to center it, so good enough for me. I'm not going to put any other attributes like side or anchor. I don't know. That's kind of looking kind of nasty. Maybe I do want this stuff centered.
Quick question.
Yeah.
The win.main loop open close. What did that run again?
Well, take a look at this. If I do a print after this, I run it, and then I close it, that's the only time it says goodbye. Main loop says hang out and don't go to the next line of code until that window is closed. Is it strictly necessary? No, if that's the last thing in your program, you don't need it. But if you want to put something that's going to run after they close the window, you better put it.
Okay.
Wait a minute. I said I was going to test it without it. Apparently I didn't. Let's prove the point. Yeah. Okay. So notice something about my little bit of code, and I probably better stop and help correct typos in a minute. If I choose vote now, none of them are selected. Printing out 0, that's kind of a default value. If I press 1, ooh, they both lit up. And it blows up. I done did a fail here. Well, I better Google it up and see how to do it. Radio button int var Python 3. Well, here they set it equal to a string var. I'm willing to do that. Let's try that. So I'm going to come back up here and do string var and let it run. Nothing. Now my vote button's not working. Broken it completely. All right, going back in time, back to infar. I really want it to be infar because that's how I got it working today. I don't want to have to run downstairs and get my example code. Yeah, right. Yeah, it's still broken. Okay. Let's see what the deal is. We're going to do another Google because that didn't work. Here we go. Aha. Here's the one thing that I've forgotten. Pardon me?
What if because you named them both T equals tk.radio, but Paul and Ringo, like T1 and T2?
Not in this case. Not in this case. What I need to do is when I create the radio button, I have to say what the value is. So up here, when I'm creating a radio button, not only I say what the variable is, but I have to say what the variable equals when it's clicked. And the variable value when it's clicked is going to be 1 and 2. Or I can make them anything that I wanted to. I could probably make it a string var and fill it with strings. But anyways. So if they click Paul, how about that? Value is equal to 1. If they click Ringo, the value is going to be 2. Yep, now it's working. All right. I want to do that experiment. You don't have to do this, well, until we know it works. But if I make this a string var, wait, we did that and it wouldn't even print. And we set it equal to 1 and 2. I saw this example in the code on that same page. Why didn't it work for us? Yeah, forget it. All right, undo all that. Okay, so the problem is that we have a number and we would like to be able to print out the name of the beetle that is selected, right? So I'm going to need to make a list where entry 1 in the list is equal to Paul and entry 2 in the list is equal to Ringo. Now that's going to leave an empty entry, right? 0. So why don't we do this?
You can change vote instead of int var to string var, and then the value you can just type in Paul in quotes. And when you click it, it'll give you Paul. I'm a Ringo fan myself.
I am doing something wrong. I'm going to come look at your code and see how you did it. Which is to make a list where entry 1 is equal to Paul and entry 2 is equal to Ringo. So, what's our list going to look like? I'm going to call it beats, short for Beatles. We can do the whole word. We know how to spell Beatles. Is equal to none, because that's entry 0 if they don't choose anybody. Paul, because that's element 1. And Ringo, because that's element 2. And down here, I need to get the name of the person that they chose. So how about this? Name is equal to Beatles subscript vote.get parentheses in subscript, and then print name. Oh, I still have it as string var, don't I? But that breaks everything. Ticking me off. Oh. All right, back to int var. Value needs to be 1. Value needs to be 2. All right, saying none because nobody is selected. Paul's the vote, Ringo's the vote. Now we shouldn't ought to had to do this little bit with the list. We should have been able to assign strings, and we know it works, but not working for me. I'm not cool enough. All right, I'm going to try to get all the code on the screen if at all possible. I guess it's not really. Yep, there it is. Cram this stuff kind of up at the top. Pause it. So if I wanted to expand this and make it unreasonably long, what I might want to do is like put a place where you fill in a name, and then when you click vote, it prints it out down here somehow, and then it erases the name. So like, you know, if I typed in my name, it'd say Jeff votes for Paul, right? And then it would deselect everything, it'd clear out the name, and the next person would get to vote. I don't think that'd be too hard. I think we could do that. We need to put a name entry in here. And we did that on Tuesday, so I'm going to go sneak a peek at our code from Tuesday to remind myself how to do that. So, how do we do our entry? Oh, wrong code. Like that. Created an entry, we packed it, and then when we wanted it, we accessed the variable with a .get. So, we're going to need a variable to hold the name of the person who's voting. Now, we already have vote, and we have vote now, and it's like we have too many things that begin with vote. How about your name? Equals tk dot int var. Good enough. I think I would like this stuff to be above the place that says choose your favorite Beatle, though. Maybe not. I think it's okay there. So we need to create an entry that'll hold that, but I'd like a label also that says, you know, your name. That way they know they're supposed to fill it in. So it's going to look exactly like this. And whenever something's going to look exactly like this, I suggest just copying and pasting. So I'm going to go grab those two lines. And here I'm going to do, instead of choose your favorite Beatle, I'm going to put fill in your name. Now we're going to create the entry where that is hooked up to the name variable. Oh, if I want this to hold a name, what is wrong with that line? Yeah, I don't want to hold my name and a number. That would not work, so that needs to be string var. Make sure you get that change in. All right, so now let's create our entry field. Entry is equal to tk.entry capital T. Var is equal to your name. And I better compile it and run it after I do this to make sure it works. Entry.pack. Blew up. All right, it's not var, is it? It's the whole word variable. Excuse me. Where I said to do var is equal to your name, I don't know what I was saying. Variable, no abbreviations, except for W, S, E, and, all right. Unknown option. Okay, I better go look at my cheat sheet again. When we create an entry, oh, excuse me, text variable equals. All right, once more with feeling, where it says variable equals text variable equals your name. All right, so we get to type in our name, we get to pick our person, vote. Well, we're not doing anything with it, right? But we're gonna. Before I go on, I want to make sure everybody's got that. Wave your hand if you're getting errors. No hand waves? All right. You can see that these user interfaces get to be a lot of code. I mean, we've got a really short one. And it's, you know, already cluttered up the screen, but that's just the way it is. You know, it's not easy to write these user interfaces. It does take a lot of code. Imagine how much code it would take if we didn't have these cool libraries like tkinter. And really, it is pretty easy once we see how to do it. I'm fumbling a little bit because I only do this like 4 or 5 times per semester. But let's, when they cast a vote, let's change things here a little bit. Let's call this, instead of name, choice, just because, you know, we have a your name variable. Now let's get the name out, the name of the voter. Name is equal to your name.get. We got to pull it out. And then here, instead of just printing out name, we're going to print out, you know, something more. We're going to print name votes for name, right? So, quote, %s voted for %s backslash, whoopsie, go back, backslash n. Oh, come on. End quote. And now, after the end quote, %sign, I'm putting in too many spaces, it's all right. Name, comma, choice. And then one more close parentheses. I'll bring the code back in just a second. Yep, so that person voted for Paul. I can't move this out of the way, apparently. Now I can. All right. Everybody got it working. I don't want to go too fast. All right, let me come look. What was going on here is that we had a comment here, like this. W means anchor it to the west side, right? Whatever. That's what we had there. And we ran it, and it's blown up like that. I do not know why, because this is, I thought that would be legal. Okay, I think I get what's going on. ... does not really mean comment. It means open a string. And it's okay to open a string on its own line. Apparently it's not okay to open a string at the end of a line. What if we put a semicolon there to mark the end of the line? Is that going to fix it? Yeah. Alrighty. So if you want to put comments like that, you can put the semicolon at the end of the line to indicate that it's the end of a line. Like this. A is equal to 1. B is equal to A. Right? Looks goofy, but it works. You know, really you ought to be putting every line of code on its own line. But if you feel like putting several lines of code on it, then you can. Okay. So, I think we've almost got this perfect. But after we vote, what would be neat for it to do? It ought to like pop up some kind of message box, and then when they click OK on that message box, it wipes this stuff out, right? Getting ready for the next voter. Well, the wiping of stuff out is real easy, right? All we need to do is we need to set our variable back to 0 and set our string var equal to an empty string. Let's do that first. And then we'll worry about popping up a message box. Maybe we won't even pop up a message box. Okay, so the choice is called vote. And we're going to set vote back to 0, right? Because it became 1 or 2 if they chose Paul or Ringo. We want to set it back to 0. And the name is in the your name variable. Your name dot set parentheses quote end quote in parentheses. So as soon as they click vote and it calls our vote now function, it's going to print our stuff and then it's going to reset those variables. So Joe Bob votes for Paul and it wiped them out, right? I still think it'd be neat if we popped up a message box like we did on Tuesday, you know, saying vote recorded or something like that. Let's see if we can do that. Again, gonna cheat. Look at lecture W, because I don't want to take y'all on a rabbit trail. Message box.show. Well, we're not going to do show error. We're going to do show info. And we're going to prefix it with TK because that's the name of our library. So before we wipe out our data, TK dot, I don't remember if it was a capital M or not. Nope. What do you know? And don't put your parentheses there. tk.messagebox.showInfo vote recorded. I'll bring the code back in just a sec. All right. Joe Bob votes for Ringo. It printed it out, I hope. It didn't clear. Oh, because I don't see the message box. I better go and look at my output. Seems to not be working the way I expect. Ooh, it's blowing up. tkinter has no attribute message box. All right, well, we ran into something like that last time. Let's get rid of all that stuff. Before we call tk.messagebox, let's take the tk out and do from tkinter import message box. That was the magic solution last time we ran into message box problems. So as long as it works, great. Oh, that's kind of ugly. I don't like the text being up there, but we can fix that. The first piece of data should be the title. Like that. And we could make this say something better. Your vote has been recorded. Something like that. Maybe it ought to clear the stuff out before it displays the message box. In which case, I'm going to cut those two things and paste it before the message box commands. Because we don't want those votes to remain on the screen when somebody else may see who we voted for. They ought to be wiped out immediately. There. I think I like that. Your opinion may differ. Maybe you like seeing that information up here. Now we could make it super fancy, and if they didn't type in a name, we could display an error message and not do the, you know, all this stuff. Maybe we feel like doing that? That'd be pretty easy. All we would have to do is here we would need to put an if statement. And if name was equal to blank, then we message box an error message. And then we return out of the function. That's only like 2 or 3 lines of code. We may as well do that. So, if the len of the name is equal to z equal to 0, colon. There's probably better ways of doing that, because what if they hit the space bar in it? We ought to use if. We ought to strip it first and then check it. So name equals name dot strip, and I have to tab that over. Don't be fooled by the fact that it's not. And then if the length of the name is 0 after being stripped, it's a problem and we need to display an error message. Now our message box command down here, I have my tkinter import message box in the wrong place, because I also need it here, right? Because that's where I'm going to display my error. I'm going to cut that import and go and paste it up at the very top with our other import statements. That's where they should be. So you see what I'm doing? I'm leaving this if statement alone. I'm going to come back and fill it in. But for now, I need to take that import and go and paste it up at the top. Why? Because I don't want to add multiple imports for the same thing. And really, that should not be necessary. We should have been able to use tk.messageBox, but I don't need that comment anymore, do I? This is pretty lame. We're not adding comments anywhere. Explain what we're doing. Maybe that'll be the last thing we do. Alrighty. So here, if the length of the name is 0, it's an error, and we're going to display an error. So messagebox.show error name cannot be blank, and then return out of the function. If we didn't want to return out of the function, we could use an else and then tab all this stuff over. Either one would work. I'm going to leave it like that because it's the fewest changes, right? The fewer changes, the better when y'all are following along. But if I was doing the programming myself, I would put else colon here, and I would tab those 4 lines over. Oh, well, it's not going to take that long. Alrighty. So I deleted that return, so I could type else colon, and now I'm going to highlight these 4 lines and tab them so that they only do that if it's a valid name. Wonder if it'll work. Name cannot be empty. Okay, I screwed it up yet again. I keep forgetting that you have to put the title before the message. So why don't we just put the title error in front of this? So in this message box, we're going to do error, end quote, comma, beginning quote, name cannot be blank. So a couple things occur to me. I don't know what y'all think, but when I run this, and then I click, you know, something, are there any improvements you can think of to the way that this is all presented?
Counter?
A counter would be cool. Another one might be, here's what I was thinking. A counter is cool. I'd kind of like this to be in the middle of the screen, right? When it came up. So is there a way to get it to center? I'm kind of blue sky now. So center tkinter window on screen. You can try to use a methods info screen with. This looks too hard. The general approach to centering a window is to calculate the appropriate screen coordinates. However, it's not sufficient for accurately centering it. Forget it. Gonna leave it alone. How about playing with the background color and the stuff like that? If we run it, maybe it'd be neat if this was like white text on a black background or something like that. Can we do that? Let's see how to set the background color and the foreground color of a label. So, TKINTE, background color of label. Well, here's how you change the fonts. That's kind of neat. And here's how you change the foreground. So I bet BG is going to be background. So let's do that. Where we create our label, go up here and find where we create our label. In fact, I'm going to start adding comments now. I don't care if you do or not. Create label for window. And here's what we're going to do. The foreground is going to be white. Now I forget if I have to put it in quotes or not. I'll blip back to the page. The background is going to be black, and I'm going to leave the text alone. Let's find out. Zip over here. Yep, quotes is correct. All right, I like that. We could set the color of the entire frame black, I believe, or yellow or something. When we create the window, maybe we could do that. BG is equal to aqua. We're going to try to set the whole window to aqua. Just playing now. And no, can't do that. Alrighty. I thought I saw a reference to that over here. Set background of tkinter window. Root.configure background equals black. Well, why couldn't they have made it look the other way? Doesn't matter what we want. We just got to follow what they want. So, when.configure, quote, background equals aqua. It's going to look ugly. Yeah, that looks real ugly. We would need to make the background of that label aqua and the background of those two things aqua as well. I don't want to take the time to do that, so I'm just going to comment that out, but I wanted to prove that I could. If you feel like mucking with all the colors, that's fine. So that's the label for the window. Actually, this is creating the window itself. So, adding comments. Create window. Window is equal to tk.tk. Create label for window. That's what we're doing here. I'm going to just delete that .configure. Or I guess I'll just go and put it underneath that window creation. All right. Create our list of choices. Create our name input field. Create the radio button for our choices. If we want to get super fancy, we can make this a for loop. For x in range 1, comma, size of list. Do we want to get that fancy? Nah. But that way you could add more people, right? I mean, there were more than 2 Beatles. But I don't want to make this so incomprehensible, so complex that if you came back. All right. Function called by the vote button. And now create the vote button. And wait until the window is closed. That kind of comment I almost like putting here, right? Now, I don't know if anybody else is typing the comments as I was. You okay with me going on to the next stage? All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to make another window that opens this file and displays it. So, when is equal to tk.T, okay? And we know we're going to need a main loop at the bottom, so I'm going to type it now just so I don't forget to do it later. All right, now what this is going to be is a different kind of control that we haven't seen before. It's going to be a big place where text could be entered, right? Multiple lines with a scroll bar. So this is a list box. List box equals tk.L list box, parentheses and parentheses. Got a packet. I should have just called it L or something, right? Listbox.pack. And now we're going to fill it up with our code. So we're going to open a file. Let's just open the name of this file, right? Because we know it's, we know it's here. So fn, short for file name, is equal to lecture x.py. Get it exactly right to what your program is called. And then file is equal to open fn, comma, mode equals quote r, because we're reading our file. Now we're just going to have a good old for loop. For line in file, colon, listbox.insert. Where are we going to insert it? We're going to insert it at the end of the list box. So tk.end, the end is in caps. And what are we inserting? We're inserting the line we just read. So line. And then we're going to close our file. We don't want to keep our file open. File.close. Hey, there he is. There's our program. Now it doesn't have a scroll bar. I wish it did. I'm sure we could add a scroll bar to it. I'm sure we could increase the size of it. But that's kind of neat. That's kind of neat. That's a little start, right? And we could edit this stuff if we wanted. Well, I lied. We can't edit it. It's because it's a list box. We would need a different kind of field for allowing the editing of the text. You know, what a list box is it's just so that you can select something and then do something, right? So like we could have put all of our Beatles in a list box and then put a vote there. Now when I close it, it's going to pop up the voter. All right, are there any questions about this? Scroll down to which point?
Toward the bottom, toward the end.
That good enough or up
Yeah.
a little? Okay. All right, the Dropbox is already created.